今天我们说说 SHAD 哈，因为为什么这事儿其实是怪我了，我们应该早说这个事儿，因为那个15号是截止，就是今年哈11月15号是截止，所以如果你觉得你今年想申请的话，要抓紧了，要抓紧了。一般来讲，今天有一个家长问我大概什么年龄哈，so the best age group for applying SHAD, I would think grade 10 or grade 11.
Yeah.
Right? You could try for grade 9, but the probability could be low. That's my opinion. 所以我们应该早一点给大家说这个事情，但稍微有一点晚，但还来得及啊。如果你今天想申请的话，实际上还有1周多的时间，应该问题不大。一会儿那个Ethan，我先讲中文啊。You guys need to learn Mandarin as well. 一会儿Ethan会讲he's gonna talk about how to apply the actual application to SHAD. 所以可能给大家过一下，这样你们真申请起来的时候就会简单很多啊，有一些细节啊，他可能会给大家看。我也要求他今天把他自己写的那个申请那个 essay 展示给大家看哈，所以你们可以看到他的 essay 是怎么写的哈。一般人是不给看。这个伊森今天很大方，说可以没问题，给你们看一下，反正也没什么太多的秘密在里面。我想说1、2句，然后就给伊森了，因为我不想这个耽误太多时间啊，因为我是觉得是这样，就是说我们老说，其实这个是我们教育的一个讲座哈，其实教育的本质到底是什么？传递知识是一方面，那在我来看呢，可能是相对不是真正的教育的本质。我觉得真正的本质，如果说传递知识只是一种手段或方法的话，真正的教育本质是培养人，是培养能力，是培养你对这个世界的洞察能力和你真正能够去解决问题的能力。就是说，你面对一件事情，你怎么去解决它？你面对一件事情，你怎么去跟你能够需要沟通的人和你需要沟通的资源去沟通？然后去连接这些资源，然后能帮助你去解决问题。洞察世界有几种形式，一种我们都知道是靠阅读，是靠学习，是靠这种知识。那还有一种方式，我们叫实践出真知，实际上就是去做了，真正去做。所以 SHAD 这个 program 或者我们叫come in 这个Summer Camp， 它是真正的是去给孩子们这样的一个机会，去面对一些这种 real world issues problems and how to solve them。那一会儿他们会讲，我就不多说了。Okay, so without further ado, this is Ethan. Maybe you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All yours.
My name's Ethan. I'm a grade 12 student at Iroquois Ridge High School, and I went to SHAD 2 years ago. So I was in grade 10, and then over the summer of grade 10, I was at SHAD. I went to U Waterloo for SHAD, and currently I am the robotics teacher. I run the robotics program here at LinkedKey.
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Brian Machado. I'm a grade 12 student at King's Christian Collegiate. I went to SHAD this past summer, and I went to McGill. And I currently teach 3D printing and coach VexIQ here at LinkedKey.
So without further ado, we'll get started on the SHAD presentation. So Henry gave a little bit of a beginning there as to what we're going to be talking about today. Specifically, the way this presentation is going to run and the specific structure of it is going to be, first I'm going to explain basically what the program is, because there's a lot of questions surrounding what exactly is SHAD. And their marketing for what is SHAD isn't very strong, so we'll go a little bit further in depth on that. And then I'll show examples of essays, and I'll show some of my essays, and I'll talk about what kind of essays SHAD's looking for and what you want to put in an essay. Because if you have the right stuff and you present it in the right way, it's not too hard to get in. So here are some photos of both Brian and I at SHAD. So I'm on the left there and then at the top. So that's just some photos from SHAD, what it kind of looks like. At the end there, we planted a tree. That's where I'm posing on the left. At the top there, we went around uptown Waterloo, visited some of the natural areas around there, and Brian's can explain the background behind this.
So my pictures are actually both at the same location. It's at the top of Montreal in Montreal. So we did a hike up there for a couple hours, and then we stayed up there and just enjoyed the view, and it was a really good experience.
So SHAD's a nonprofit. It's a nonprofit organization, and the goal of SHAD is to inspire youth and take already exceptional youth and make them even more exceptional, give them more exceptional experiences. And because of this, SHAD is very intensive. So you'll end up staying in a residence for about a month, the month of July, and during that month you have almost no free time. They fill nearly every minute with some kind of, either it's a team building activity or it's some sort of STEAM related task. Like they could be teaching you something. It could be like, an example is at my campus they taught us matrix math. That's just an example. But we also did non-technical things, like we would get speaks from, we would have lectures from different people across the industry, so different industries as well. So we had lectures from professors, we had lectures from prominent businessmen, like we had an executive from BlackBerry came in and talked to us about designing the BlackBerry phone. So there's all sorts of things that fit any kind of interest that you may have, and it may even delve into a new interest that you didn't even know that you had. So SHAD is a super intensive life, a super intensive month, and a really big thing that they're pushing now is that even though it's just a month that you're with the people at SHAD and with your fellow peers, it expands beyond that. What they're starting to do now is the network that you build at SHAD, they want you to keep building onto that network, and they hold events yearly where you can meet up with fellow SHADs and you can discuss with them across the country. Because people from SHAD come from every corner of Canada. I had people at my campus from New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, BC, Alberta, all over the place, and some even come from outside of Canada. And this network is really strong, and it's important to maintain it. And I still talk with a lot of friends that I got from SHAD, and SHAD itself pushes to keep these relationships together as well. So to talk a little bit more about some workshops and some lectures and some labs, I gave a few examples of some lectures, labs, and workshops that I went through, and Brian can tell you about some of his.
Sure. So for us at McGill, every campus is actually quite different from what I've noticed. So from us at McGill, we did a lot of non-technical things. So we actually started off the month in a different campus than we ended off the month. So for the first week, we were at a like sort of a farm campus, and every day we our structure for the day would kind of look like you wake up, you get breakfast, then you go to a lecture, then you have a break, then you have another lecture, then you have lunch, and in the afternoon we would do some sort of activity. So at that campus, an activity would be like we'd go over to the cow farm and see how they farm milk, or we would go to the flowers and see how the agriculture part of the campus worked. And so that was like completely different than what a lot of us at SHAD had ever experienced before. And then after the first week, we moved over to the more known McGill campus, downtown McGill, where we did more technical lectures. So we did a lot of actual biological lectures. So I don't know, things with biology, a lot of chemistry too. We didn't do too much STEAM, but it really depends. So for example, a lecture could be, I don't know, we did a lot of different things.
Did you have Tom Mulcair?
Yeah, we did have Tom Mulcair. So we had, what is his position?
He was Tom Mulcair, for those who don't know, he was the past federal leader of the NDP party. So, pretty prominent figure that Brian doesn't seem to know, but pretty prominent figure. So, there's a lot of those prominent figures that end up going to SHAD and talking to the students at SHAD. And you do get to explore Canada. So the campuses that you can go to are all across the country. You can go to essentially any province, with the exception of maybe like Northwest Territories and Nunavut, right? But other than that, you can go almost anywhere. If you want to go to the West Coast, they have universities there where you can go to SHAD. If you want to go to the East Coast, you can go there. If you want to go Central Canada, you can go there. If you want to stay in Ontario, you can do that as well. So it doesn't matter where you are at any of the campuses. A few things are always constant. The SHAD experience at each campus is slightly different. That's why it's good to talk to people and figure out what that experience is like. But generally speaking, there's always going to be those lectures, those labs, those workshops, and you're also going to do some amount of camping. So throughout it, you're going to go out and explore a bit. And you're going to go out, and if you're in BC, you'll go and look at the mountains. If you're in Ontario, you might go through some forests. It really depends on where you are, but there's always some form of camping and sort of outdoorsiness. So a part of SHAD is that they also try to push you outside of your comfort zone. So with Brian talking about biology and farming and stuff like that, usually most SHADs, I can't speak for all of them, we're from like a more city area, right, here in Mississauga, Oakville. But most SHADs probably haven't milked a cow. So that's an example of going outside of your comfort zone. We did things sort of like that. We did some rock climbing. I think one of the most out there things that we did was they had someone come in and teach us Kung Fu, which was kind of odd, but it just sort of underlines the idea that there's all sorts of things that happen, and it's all to build a community and to give you new experiences. Speaking of building a community, the bonds that you generate at SHAD are extraordinarily strong. You're constantly working with a group of about 60 like-minded people for a month, and it's pretty impressive at how after a week, 2 weeks, you can generate some really close bonds with a few friends that will last a very long time. The people that you meet there will go on to do extraordinary things, and it's a very, very strong network. It's not like a usual networking event where you just talk to some people, maybe take down some phone numbers, and then call them up later. These are people who you genuinely are connected with, almost as if you went to like high school with them or something like that. Another big part of SHAD is the entrepreneurship challenge. And when I was at SHAD, this was a little bit different from how it is right now. But throughout SHAD, they give you a challenge and you work with a group in order to solve a problem to it. So in my year, our problem had to do with energy consumption of Canadians. And it's a really big issue, reducing energy consumption. And so you have to sort of whittle it down to a small area. And they push you to prototype a solution, so actually build a solution that you come up with, and then make a business plan for that. So how are you going to market it? How's it going to work? And then you have to actually present it to judges. So at our campus, our judges consisted of our fellow SHADs, but we also had a few prominent figures from the community, like some politicians, some professors from the university. So there's a lot of people to present to. And in my year, the winners from each campus would then go on to a Canada-wide competition, like a SHAD Cup is what they called it. They don't do that anymore. They now do campus awards. So Brian can explain more about that.
Sure. So Ethan talked about his year's project. My year's project was to help solve natural disasters that occur in Canada. I think that was something along the line of that, which is a very large and broad topic. So that's why they want us SHADs to think very deeply about this. So I think my campus did more of this than Ethan's did. You didn't do too much.
It wasn't a big focus on my campus.
Yeah, so we focused on it a bit more. So every day, they introduced it about a week in, and so every day we would work on it for a couple hours. Often you'd go back to your room and work on it if you have work to do still. And so our campus actually focused on the development of how to come up with a good idea and the brainstorming process. They really emphasized that. So we had a professional brainstormer come in several times to teach us the different stages of brainstorming and to come up with an idea that's much better than the first or second idea that you would have. Yeah, what was your other point?
The awards at the end.
I went this summer.
You went this summer, and he went last summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in my year, we didn't have the SHAD Cup. It was just local. We just competed against our local SHADs at our campus, which was which kind of, I don't know, for some people it defeated the point of the SHAD Cup, but it's more about the learning process than it is about winning it.
Yeah.
So that means, okay, Brian, sorry, Ethan went to SHAD at the end of his grade 10, and then Brian went to SHAD at the end of his grade 11, right?
Yeah.
So if you are currently in grade 10 or 11, it's the time to apply now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
If you're in grade 9, you could try again. The chance could be, slimmer, right? So go ahead.
You can also apply in grade 12. If you're a grade 12, you can still go in your grade 12 year. Quite a few of my SHADs were grade 12s actually. It's because it's not actually it's a good thing for your resume and to show that you've been a part of that. But it is a good life experience that I would actually recommend just for anyone, even in grade 12.
And it does give you access to the network, and it gives you access. Although it doesn't go on your university application, the experience itself is often just enough to warrant applying anyways.
Yeah, definitely.
So people from SHAD. So the people that have gone through SHAD have usually gone on to really prominent careers. So SHAD has existed since about, I think it was 1986. So it's been going a very long time. It's about at 35 years now. And in that time, it's experienced quite a substantial amount of growth. And it's also seen a lot of very prominent figures go through it. So I'll just run over a few of these things here. There's been 17,000 SHAD Fellows. So SHAD Fellows are alumni of the SHAD program. So 17,000 people have gone through SHAD in the past 35 years. 85% of those 17,000 will graduate with a science or engineering degree. 56 of them were Schulich leaders. The Schulich Award is a Canada-wide scholarship of $100,000. And then there's also the 88 Lauren Scholars. The Lauren is a more difficult version of the Schulich. It's a lot harder, there's more stages, and it's also a $100,000 scholarship for university. 20% of all SHADs have launched a startup, which is pretty impressive. 20% of 17,000 is quite a few. 4 SHADs are on the Prime Minister's Youth Council. So for those of you who don't know, the Prime Minister's Youth Council is a council of youth from across Canada that represent the values of youth, and they sort of add a little bit of a youth aspect to what the Prime Minister is working on with the Liberal Party, with the federal Liberal Party.
就是叫总理的青年智囊团、青年顾问团。
One of the dragons on the Dragon's Den is a SHAD alumni, and I'm not sure what the NASA researcher is.
I guess one of them is.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about that one. And then 32 are Rhodes Scholars. So SHADs have gone on to do really great things, and I know one of the SHADs from my campus who graduated the year after SHAD was another one of the Schulich leaders. And some of the people that you meet at SHAD are they're quite amazing. It's really like the best of the best from Canada. So these are the host universities where you can go to SHAD. This has been growing quite significantly in recent years. SHAD has been under new guidance. They have a new CEO now. And there's been some really big changes that have been happening in the last few years. So a few notable ones here are York University. That's a brand new one. And I think Memorial as well is also new, although I'm not sure. But this list continues to grow. So if you don't apply this year, and if you're applying next year, you can expect to see maybe 3-4 new universities on here. But there's a wide range of universities. They span coast to coast. And also all of these universities, generally speaking, will offer SHAD-specific scholarships for when you apply to the university in grade 12. So if you're interested in getting exclusive access to some scholarships, going to these universities and going to SHAD will give you access to those. So what makes up a SHAD? So when you're applying, what kind of skills are they looking for? What kind of qualities are they looking for? So basically, what this boils down to is, are you going to add to the SHAD experience? So are you going to contribute to the experience that others have at SHAD? And are you going to take away a lot from SHAD? So not only are you going to add to people's experiences, but are you going to take away something from SHAD itself? If you don't really participate in SHAD, then they're not really looking for you. So motivated individuals who have a very wide background, perhaps very well-rounded, are the kind of individuals that they're looking for. So they're looking for people who have all sorts of experiences and are interested in learning more. So people who would say no to some odd activity are not the kind of people that they're looking for. So if you're in grade 9 or if you're younger than that and you're looking at activities to do to perhaps pad your resume for SHAD, perhaps look at doing things that make you more well-rounded. So if you're perhaps focused in just a specific area like science or technology, maybe consider picking up an art skill, something soft. That might help round you out for SHAD. And that's also good for life as well, and especially universities as well.
Yeah, that's what they talked about a lot at our campus. They talked a lot about developing your soft skills. So because they knew a lot of us already had a lot of the hard skills that we really needed to go into university, but a lot of them, they wanted to enforce that soft skills are actually very important too. So how you speak to people, how you interact, how you can identify things in your community, things more of the kind of emotional level of a person that makes you, like Ethan said, more well-rounded as an individual.
All right, let's go to the next slide. So, applying to SHAD. So the deadline for the application for SHAD is actually right around the corner. It's poor timing for this presentation, but you do have enough time to apply. The application itself is not that long. So the application deadline is November 19th. So that's a week and a bit away. So if you're looking at and you're interested in applying, I would definitely start as soon as possible, like tonight, tomorrow. The things that they're looking for, and we'll go further in depth in these, we'll actually go through this year's application as well. You need an outline of your activities. So what do you do? What kind of volunteering do you do? What's your past work history, for example? Some personal essays. So these are things like why SHAD. We'll go further in depth later on. An academic transcript. Don't worry about that. If your grades are low, it's not an issue. The way that they prioritize things on the SHAD application is they look at your essays first, then they look at your activities, and then they'll look at your reference, and then they look at your transcript. So they really care about you as a person, the qualities that you have as a person, versus the grades that you get. So it's not necessarily the grades. They're trying to build community leaders, people who are who will lead their communities and make their communities a better place, not necessarily people who just get high grades and therefore they get into SHAD. That's not how it works. It's really about those sort of soft, hard skills.
I just want to add
Yep.
one more thing. So if you look at this, if you listen what Ethan was just talking about. So he was talking about the priorities of the requirements, right? So essay first, and then your reference letter, your activity, your reference letter, and then your transcript, right? So that is in line with the actual. If you look at all the Ivy League, the Ivy schools, their application requirements, this is pretty much in line with those, right? So the Ivy League, for example, like Harvard University, they are looking for what kind of person you are, right? Not necessarily what kind of how good a student you are. It has to be a livable person. What kind of that person is, right? So you need to present that through your essay, through your reference letter, through your activities. The same thing here. Okay, so you can consider this a it may be like a rehearsal of your college application.
Yeah. Like both of us are applying for universities right now, and the stuff that we saw in the SHAD application,
Pretty much the same.
it's essentially the same. So this is just like a simplified version of university and college applications. So if you practice with these and get really great at this, and you get into SHAD and all that, then this will be amazing practice for when you have to apply for universities later on. Not to mention that if you do get into the SHAD program, it makes your university application look that much better because you've already sort of gone through it. It shows that you're motivated. Another thing to touch on, if you are in grade 9, you cannot apply. Contrary to what Henry said, you cannot apply for SHAD. You cannot get in. The youngest that you can be is grade 10. If you're in grade 10, you can apply this year, and then you'll get in for the grade 10 summer. If you're in grade 9, you cannot apply. If you're in grade 12, you can apply. If you're older than grade 12, you cannot. So it's grade 10, 11, 12. That's basically the area there. It says right here, 10, 11, 12. And then if you're older than that, you can't apply. Yeah. And the time that SHAD takes place, it's actually changed. It's June 30th to July 26th. It used to be like July 1st to July
27, 28.
Something like that. So it shifted a bit to the left. One more thing. It's not actually on this presentation, but I think it's very important to touch on. SHAD does also have internships. So for people who get into SHAD, there is a chance that you can compete against fellow SHADs for internships at companies doing actual meaningful roles at the company. There's jobs at RBC. As of recently, it's declined because, just due to
a bill got passed in
Yeah.
Canada where you cannot have unpaid labor for internships. So
Yeah.
he had an internship,
it was unpaid.
but then in my year I didn't get one because I think the amount of internships dropped by about like 90-something%.
That
So-
said, even though my internship was unpaid, I thought my internship was amazing. I was working at a university. I was at York University, and I was building and designing circuits for them. So I was actually learning like some really serious circuit design skills that I still use today. And even though it was unpaid, I consider myself to have been paid in the knowledge that I learned, because I was working with like professors and stuff. Like that's unheard of for a grade 10 student. So I thought that was a really great experience. It's unfortunate they passed that bill, that law, but I can't comment on that. So the cost for SHAD, I don't know if it's actually listed here. It says it costs nothing to apply, but to actually go to SHAD, it does cost money. I think it's like
It's gonna probably be like $4,800.
some.
Yeah, was it more
It's
getting more expensive.
Yes, it's getting more expensive. It's very expensive, but there is a lot of financial support. I don't know how much. When I applied, the cost was lower and the financial support was lower, but now I believe the cost is a lot higher and the financial support is also a lot higher. So, yeah,
Yeah.
take that as you may. That's just one of the things. So if you want to like follow SHAD, maybe if your child's too young and you want to learn more about SHAD and see what it's like over the summer, what SHAD does over the summer is they have each campus. They have students at the campuses take photos and document their experience at the campus and what they're actually doing at the campus. So it's a good way to actually see what the experience is genuinely like.
Yeah.
Short of going to SHAD itself.
I think like every campus usually runs an Instagram page. I think that's the most beneficial thing to follow if you have an Instagram. Every SHAD campus will run theirs, and then the official SHAD Instagram gets updated every day. So every day a SHAD campus will have a SHAD takeover for the official campus where students get to run the official SHAD page, which has I don't know how many thousand followers. So,
Yeah.
and they post stuff all the time about experiences and stuff, and I follow that too. It's just really good to see what other SHADs are doing, and they update a lot. So if you want to see, Instagram's probably the best way to go.
Yep. Alright. Slide. So that's the end of this presentation, but we have a lot more to talk about. So final pictures of Brian and I. So now what we'll do is we'll go on to the application for SHAD. So I think I have that on this. Yeah. I can't see that. We're gonna mirror this. Okay. So actually, let's take questions first before we get into the application itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So, you know, what's the ratio for application? Like, how many people apply and how many got
Yeah, so for my year, I think it was like, out of everyone that applied, about 20% got accepted. So they had about 600 slots, and
Are
I
you
think
sure?
the slots have been growing.
It was like 50% in my year.
50% your year?
40, 50.
If for my year, it was like,
I think certain universities are more popular than others, right? So if you look at UBC could be the most popular
Yeah.
one. So to be honest,
Usually
with
is.
you, right? So everybody wants to go to UBC. So I would say, if if you wanna apply, think about your own scenario. If you wanna apply, let's say for example, University of Waterloo is your dream school, right? So I would say put University of Waterloo as your first choice in the what's that called, Group A, right?
Yep.
In the Group A, then they will sort it out based on your needs, based on your qualifications, right? So that's there's no guarantee. You put the school in your first bracket, they won't guarantee that you'll get that school.
What I've noticed is that they try to really get a mix. So they try to get usually 50% female, 50% male, and they try to get a mix of qualities. Not necessarily like generally like the kind of people. So they'll try to have more people, like half people are extroverted, half people are more introverted. So they'll try to get a really nice like communal mix of people who will work well together. So it's a very tailored program, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like that when you first get there, but you do realize that it is tailored to some degree.
Yeah, I can talk a bit more about that. So at our campus, obviously a lot of Ontarians apply to SHAD. So you just I don't know how it happened for you, but for us we had 50%.
50%.
Yeah, so usually they try to get 50% of Ontario students, so around 30 people, and then the other 50% will be from outside of Ontario. So we had people from Saskatchewan, UBC, New Brunswick, Halifax, places like that where people are fairly different from what you are and what you've experienced, and that helps with that. And similarly, so I did what Henry suggested, and I want to go to Waterloo, so I applied to Waterloo and I put it as my A in the first A, and then so on. I don't know the other Ontario campuses because I wanted to go to a University of Ontario, and I didn't get an Ontario campus. I got a McGill campus, which I thought was bad at first, but turned out that it was actually good in the end because I got to experience something that I don't think I would have experienced if I stayed locally. And I would encourage you go to a different province than you're currently in because it gives you a different perspective on what's going on kind of around Canada, and I don't know, I think it's a good experience.
Yeah. Going outside of Ontario is definitely a really good idea. Yeah.
I got a question here. Who are the teaching staff?
So I can talk about my teaching staff. So at my university, University of Waterloo, and part of the reason why I chose it, outside of it being a university that I want to go to, was it's now the longest running SHAD campus. It's existed for about 30 years or so. So they have a very long history. And the teaching staff are composed of, there's actual staff, and then they have, what do they call them?
PAs.
PAs, that's right, PAs. So you have your program director who runs the whole SHAD outfit, and then you have some auxiliary staff who are usually adults, and then you have PAs who are usually responsible, each one's usually in university, and they're responsible for a group of SHADs. So if there's, at my campus we had 60 people roughly, and we had one PA for a group of 10 SHADs. So program assistant. So these groups will sometimes split up for different activities, depending on what the activity was. And they were kind of your liaisons if you had any questions, and they were really easy to relate to because they were in university. They were always usually very lively, and they didn't necessarily go to the university that you're at. Some of them were from other universities. Within the staff itself, the staff was usually made up of sometimes teachers, like high school teachers. Like I think we have 1 or 2 high school teachers, but generally it's professors. So professors from the campus, and the program director specifically. His name was Rob Gorbett, and he was a professor at Waterloo, a very high-up professor, and he had started a lot of different programs at University of Waterloo, which is pretty cool. He'd actually founded the mechatronics program, and he runs a startup on the side. Usually the program directors are handpicked by SHAD, and they're very, very good at what they do. So they have a vision, and they have goals that they want to meet, and they kind of really direct the whole experience. They work very, very hard, all of them, to make the SHAD experience very quality. And also, the program assistants have usually gone to SHAD in the past.
Yep.
So they were students at some point, they've gone through the process, and now they want to come back and work with SHADs again. So they're usually very motivated as well.
Yeah, so I can talk about my staff. So when I went, McGill was the first year. So I went like the first year McGill was a campus, so it was a very new one. And so people thought that it wouldn't be very good, contrary to Waterloo, because it hasn't been tested before. So many of the activities were new, and the program hadn't been run. So there were like some parts that kind of could have been better, but the way they did it is they brought the Queen's program director, who had done it for I think a decade almost, and he was our program director. So they brought someone who knew exactly how SHAD should be run, and he ran our campus, which allowed it to almost be as good as every other campus right off of the bat in 1 year. So that's why new campuses aren't actually that bad. They're run by experienced staff.
And you also had like professors and stuff, right?
Not really. So we had, well, he was a professor.
Yeah.
He was actually from McGill, but he was at Queen's, and then he came back to do McGill's campus. And then we had actually a program director assistant, which was like kind of the sub right under him. And his dad's actually the Fustel, what's his name? Something Fustel. He's an astronaut. So we FaceTimed an astronaut during SHAD. So that was really cool. He's in the space station. So like you meet really extraordinary people, and he was training to be an astronaut too. So we got to talk to him, and he was with us every day. So we talked to him every day about space.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And more on the PAs. I think personally the PAs for me changed my life the most, because they've gone through the experience, and they've been able to apply what they've learned at SHAD to their lives and kind of grow a lot, and then they get to kind of bring that onto you. And so usually they're much more developed, and they're able to understand what you're going through during the SHAD experience, because the SHAD experience is something that you don't understand until you do it.
Yeah.
It's really hard to explain. Like,
it's going into SHAD, I had no idea what to expect at all. Like the marketing materials don't really talk about what SHAD is. Like what we're telling you right now is more than you'll find on SHAD's website, and that's because I think it's because they want it to be really like surprising once you get there. They want it to really surprise you, and they want those surprises to help bring the community together.
Yeah.
And also because there really isn't like an algorithm for SHAD. It's just how the professors choose to run it, and it's a very, very well run program. The activities that are done are carefully selected, and it is very, very different. Like it's intense. It's intense.
Yeah. And they really care about each student.
Yeah.
So it's not like a usual summer camp where some students who don't really want to participate, they just get to sit off to the side. Like that doesn't happen. You have to participate, and if you're not engaging, they will talk to you and they will ask you why you're not engaging. And even so, a kid at my campus actually got sent home for not participating properly.
Yeah.
So it's a very serious experience. But if you're doing the best you can and you're trying, they'll help you, they'll support you, and I don't know, they talk to you like they're like your parent. Like the PAs are kind of like your parents for the month. Like they get to know you almost as well as your parents. It's kind of weird, but it's very nice.
Yeah. So any more questions, or can we get? No. Okay. So I think we'll get started going through the application here. So this is a copy. This is a paper copy actually of the application for SHAD 2019. So this is this year. So you've got basic things like name, location, email, grade. Oh, this is new. This one was last year I think as well.
Yeah, I had that.
First experience. First is a robotics program. If anyone knows about that. SHAD alumni.
What?
Okay. Oh, sorry. If you've heard from a SHAD fellow alumni.
Oh, okay.
Right. This is a transcript. So transcript, you just attach it. So you can get a transcript from a high school. Just go to your career counselor, ask, can I get a transcript? And they'll give you a transcript.
Just your grades.
So these are the essays. So these are experiences. So they basically ask, and they had this my year as well, how many hours you spend each week doing activities. So these are like, this one is for school and community activities, like student clubs, student government. Then you can leave a comment. So you would write a little bit about what you've done. So like, I can show you what I put for that as well. Awards that you've won. So any awards that you've won in the past few years. involvement in soft skills, so like dance, arts, etc. Any work you've done. When I applied, I didn't have anything to put there because I hadn't had a job, so that was blank for me. And then here we get onto the essays. This is the most important part. So the essays are really how they get to know you as a SHAD. This is probably the part that you should focus the most on. It's really key to the application. So the first one here is tell us something that means a lot to you and that you've been involved with for a period of time. Did they have that on your application?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay, so they didn't have that on mine. They've been adding more essays in the recent years. So the way you usually answer these essays is you have to think about what other people are going to answer. You don't want to just be another face in the crowd. You want to stand out. So you're going to want to, maybe think outside the box. Think about things that maybe other people wouldn't say. That's not to say that you should do something really way out there, but you should definitely not put
the usual.
I've been. I'm not too sure. Something like I'm in student government, or depending on how much you worked on student government, but that's something that you're going to get a lot from SHADs. From my SHAD campus alone, a lot of the presidents of the student government, almost half of them were presidents from student government. So if you wanted to blend in with people, it's not very out there. It's not really special. They want to see people who have a wide range of skills that can fit into the mix a little bit. So an example for what I can think of, one SHAD who went to your campus, Steph, she put on hers, I think she put that she runs a bee blog and she's really interested in helping the bees. So she talked a little bit about how she helps bees and all the knowledge that she has around saving bees, which is kind of out there. It's interesting, right? It shows interest, it shows compassion, it shows dedication, but it's not something that everyone else would have. And it's also an example of a soft skill. That would be a more soft skill.
Yeah.
Failing at something. Also didn't have that on mine.
I have that on mine.
So tell us in a time about you failed at something, what you learned from it. So a really good defining failure would be something like, what did you put down for yours?
I don't know, man.
So maybe a failure that changed you, and then talk about how it changed you. Focus on how it changed you and how it made you a better person, because that would be what they.
Yeah, because the SHAD experience is about becoming a better person.
Yeah.
So they want to see if you have the ability to actually do that during the month.
Yeah, because learning from failure was something that they highlighted a lot at my campus.
Yeah, me too.
You may make mistakes, but if you learn from those mistakes, then you'll be a better person for it. So they encourage people to, step outside their comfort zone, to make those mistakes, to sort of learn something from it, and that's how you really take away from the experience. And that's also a really good life skill as well. A strong opinion or position on a topic. I wouldn't get too political on that, but I would probably talk about, perhaps you could connect that back to your first essay, about something positive. I would focus on something positive for everything. For all these essays, I would focus on something positive. I would not focus on something negative. I wouldn't talk about Trump or something like that. I would shy away from that.
Yeah.
Teaching yourself a new skill or idea. So for anyone, I think I know what you probably put down for this. This is a good place to shine in terms of your technical skills. Because although I'm talking a lot about soft skills, about arts and arts and sports and things like that, you do need to have some technical skills, and you do need to let that through a bit. So this would be a good time to talk about your technical skills. So an example for myself would be, I taught myself how to program. So you could put down how you taught yourself to program, or if you taught yourself how to juggle, that would be a really good soft skill as well, if you want to put a soft skill in there. But it doesn't have to be something really, really big. It just has to be something that defines character. So, and also, if you're thinking of things that will pad your SHAD resume, think of activities that would change you as a person. Those are the kind of activities that SHAD is looking for. So where you kind of step outside your comfort zone already, taking risks. Man, these essays are all different from the year that I applied.
This was an important essay.
This is
It's asking for how you
solving-
solve something in your community.
so this essay directly connects back to the actual purpose of SHAD, which is to create change makers, to create people who have changed and who are really, really dedicated to something and they're really motivated to change something in their community. So talking about a way that you've impacted your community, that's a really big deal. And so you're definitely going to want to really talk hard about like that. And perhaps with this one, I think something good for this one, this would be a good example if you've held like an executive position on a school club. That would really come out well here. So perhaps something that you've done within your school. It's hard for people like us from like more city areas to talk about how you shape a community, because communities are kind of large now, pretty big here. So talk about how you change your school community. That's probably a much that is a better place to start. Not to say, actually, as a side note, at SHAD you will meet people who like grew up on farms, and it's bizarre.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Like a lot of the Easterners.
Yeah, a lot of
New
people from like
Brunswick and
yeah.
Halifax and stuff like that.
and even from like central like Saskatchewan. A
Yeah.
lot of them are like from farms and things. Very different life. This part is optional. I would not leave it as optional. I would definitely fill this. Anything that says optional does not mean optional. It means you fill it, because you want to give an edge everywhere. And that also goes for university applications. If something is optional on a university application and you care enough that you want to get into that university, then you're going to want to fill that out. It's not optional. You fill it in. So for this, I talked about a robot that I had built. That's not a very soft skill, but if you play the piano, you could play a little piece, record it, put a link there. That's a good example. And then anything else that you'd like to talk about for your application to SHAD, perhaps be more genuine there, because you've sort of been answering prompts before then, sort of answering things where they're looking for a certain kind of response. Here you can actually be very genuine, and you can talk about why you're like particularly interested in SHAD, and you can let those qualities shine through that would make you a good fit for SHAD. You can talk about why SHAD is important to you, and be genuine in terms of how SHAD would help you, and also how you would help SHAD.
Yeah, that's an important thing. They want every student on the campus, like Ethan said, to give something to the campus, and also to be able to take something away from all the other SHADs that have given something to the campus.
Yeah, a thing that they told us right when we got there was you will only take out of SHAD what you put in.
Yeah.
So
That's like, they tell that at every single campus, because it's the most true thing you'll hear.
So if you want to have like a kind of like a spin on all of your essays, talking about how your skills would relate to allowing you to put something into the SHAD experience, that's very valuable, and that would definitely help your application.
Yep.
And also talking about the application here, if you apply in grade 10 and you don't get in, and then you apply next year in grade 11, there's a higher chance that you'll get in. And in this section, you should probably mention that you applied the previous year, because that'll give you a higher chance of getting in. Usually, applying 2 years in a row after you don't get in, it shows dedication, and it usually makes it more likely for you to actually get into SHAD.
Yeah, a lot of my SHADs were second-time appliers. So.
Yeah, it definitely gives you an edge on your application. So now I'm going to show you my SHAD application, which is, the questions are actually not really applicable to this application anymore because it's changed so much in the past 2 years. Question, yeah? How formal are the essays? So you've probably learned like the formal essay format in high school? Yeah? Yeah, forget about it. Don't use it.
Yeah, it's not that.
Yeah, don't do that.
It's more of a...
It's just you write
It's
down...
a paragraph. It's more of a paragraph.
That's
really.
not to say that you shouldn't be following grammar conventions, because you absolutely should. Like, use proper grammar, but you don't have to make like, here's my main point as to why you should accept me to SHAD. I'm gonna back up that with some links to some websites here and some scholarly articles. You don't do that. So this is my SHAD application. So the first portion is about-ish the same. And if for anyone who wants this, I can send this to you as well. So if you want to come out at the end, I can give you like you can give me your email and then I can send it to you. So this is kind of out of date though. It doesn't really apply to this year's SHAD, so that's why I feel okay giving it to you. And so activities. So I talked about in the spring. So at this point in time, this is from 2 years ago. So I was doing far different things than I'm doing today. But at that point in time, I was doing a lot of robotics. I was doing a lot of FRC robotics at the time. And the robotics season is primarily in spring. So I talked about how during the spring, you know, it's really intense and I put in a lot of time around then. And Brian would also know that.
Yep. That was when I focused.
By the way, I think Ethan, you won the second place in the world competition.
Yeah, I talked about that in here as well. So yeah, I talked about my other previous robotics wins as well. I think that probably gave my application an edge versus others.
Right.
For soft skills, I talked about like sports I play and also the stuff that I was doing with like lifeguarding and getting my lifeguard certifications. Yeah, so like awards I've won, I talked about Vex IQ, how we won regionals, provincials, and then we won internationals, and then I talked about like piano. I talked about coaching FLL because I didn't have any work that I had done at that point. So I just talked about the robotics teams that I had worked with, and let's make this a little bigger actually. So 3 accomplishments. This is one of our essays. This is not on this year's application. So the way that I structured it was I sort of split them up into three different chunks. I think the best essay here that I think really gave me an edge was my why SHAD. If you do get into SHAD, what I thought was kind of cool was I went to my program assistants and all of your PAs, I don't know if you knew this, but all of your PAs, prior to you arriving at SHAD, they read over everyone's essay. So they know exactly what kind of kids they're receiving. And it was really freaky because usually at a summer camp, right, you show up to the summer camp and it's like, okay, let's go around and learn everyone's names. They only did that for the SHADs because all the program assistants, program directors, staff, they would just go like, oh, you're Ethan on the first day. And I wasn't wearing a name tag or anything, and they knew my name because they had read over all of our essays and they had like looked at photos of us and they knew who we are prior to it, which is kind of weird, but it makes the experience that much better because they know who they're dealing with.
They could have search you up on the internet.
I don't know if they do that. I asked them about like my essays, and they said, oh yeah, you know, we read over all of your essays prior, and they even pulled up my essay for me, and they showed me how it was marked by SHAD. So how this entire application was marked by SHAD, the strong points and the weak points. So I could actually see like which essays were good and which essays were bad.
They don't do that anymore.
Well, okay, they technically weren't allowed to do it, but I talked them into actually showing it to me.
Yeah. They also rank you throughout the month. So at the end of the month, they say they basically mark you on how good of a SHAD you were, and that allows you to and that's how you have the opportunity to become a PA, so like a program assistant, later on based on how well you perform. Not perform, but sort of how well they think you developed during the SHAD program and how much you took in from it.
This was my best essay. This essay was my best one. They don't have this on the SHAD application anymore. When I applied to SHAD, I think the year that I applied to SHAD was right when they were switching over from the old style of SHAD that had been used for about like 35 years to the newer style of SHAD where it's all about growth and expanding networks and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like really growing the program. So I'm kind of more of a relic now, I guess. I talked about how SHAD was really important to me, how I had been interested in SHAD for a very long time, how my activities connected to SHAD, and how SHAD connected to my activities. I talked about how a lot of the skills that SHAD is supposed to give you, I already possessed to some degree, and SHAD will build on them. And I kind of told it like a story, which I think is why it was good. I talked about how it's like a stepping stone on my path to university and stuff. So like, sort of make the essays interesting. The people who are reading your essays, they're going to be reading a ton of essays, like a lot of essays. So you want yours to stick out. So you want to put stuff in there that's actually interesting and keeps them engaged. That also means that generally speaking, you're going to want to put your most important points at the beginning, because if they don't read through the entire essay, at least they'll catch the most important stuff at the beginning. Just ways to structure it. Yeah. So, anything else you should tell us about? Fill it. Don't leave it blank. Even though it's optional, you should always fill it. Yeah. So, for people who want this, I can send it out. Any other questions? Yep.
How long at a time for you to prepare those package?
Oh, okay. So to do this, I can't remember. I remember myself. I think I started my SHAD application kind of late. I think I did it with about a month before.
Oh my.
But
1 week.
but sometimes I procrastinate. So at that time, I think I started the application like a month early, and I maybe got my reference at that time, but I didn't really finish the essays until like maybe 1 week before, which is about where we're at right now. So if you're really interested in going to SHAD, there is enough time to do your essays for it. You just have to be motivated, and you have to go and.
I think the harder part is the reference at this point.
Yeah,
So-
if you're interested in getting SHAD, like go get your reference like today, tomorrow.
How
Yeah.
many reference is better to have?
You can only have you can have more than one, but they will only look at one. I'm pretty sure.
Is it a reference that is get from a teacher?
Yeah.
High school teachers, or-
It just can't be a relative. So it can't be someone who you're related to, but it could be like it can be a coach, it could be a teacher, it could be
So for example, if
Um,
let's say we were to apply this year, I think we could use Henry as a reference.
yeah.
For
yeah,
example.
that
Buy me coffee.
employer, exactly. There you go. So yeah, basically someone who knows you. I have seen the reference application. The teacher that was my reference, I don't think they're supposed to do this, but he like called me into like his office, and then we did the reference together, which is probably not how it's supposed to be done. But for the person who's writing the reference,
It does happen. It does happen. If the teacher knows you really, really well, sometimes they do that.
yeah, I think it's mostly just for, as I said, reference isn't that important. I think they use it for fact checking though. So if you're getting a teacher as a reference, what might be a good idea is if you have a resume, give them your resume so that they know what kind of things like numbers you're gonna quote on your application. So like one thing that I quoted was the years of robotics that I've been doing, which at this time was like 6 or something. So I gave them a resume that had, I've done robotics for 6 years, so that things line up. If things don't line up, that's when things become questionable, because they want to make sure that you're not lying.
So what I would suggest on that, okay, so you can tell me what you think. So you can go and talk to your teacher, your child's teacher, right? And tell them straight, right? This is what I want you to talk about me. And you can, this is very legit. There's no issue with this, okay? So you can tell them that I want you to talk about my my learning passion, right? You can talk about my responsibility. You can talk about my leadership, right? You can tell them that, no problems. That's very legit. This is legit, right? Then some teachers they share a piece of whatever they're writing with you. Some don't, but that doesn't really matter, right? So is the deadline 15?
19.
Or 19?
19.
So I think it's almost exactly 2 weeks.
Yeah,
You
so-
got 2 weeks. You still should be okay.
So a few things about that 19th deadline. I think the deadline for the references is actually later. I think.
I think
it
I'm not
is.
sure, but I think it is.
And a funny thing that I saw last year was they were giving application extensions. For example, who here's in DECA? Yeah, a few people. Okay, so at the regional DECA competition, SHAD had a booth there, and they were giving extensions from the booth to people. So because that was past the deadline, that competition, except they wanted people who were in DECA to apply to SHAD, even though the deadline had already passed. So they were giving application extensions to some people. So if you don't meet the 19th deadline, there is a possibility for an extension. I would try to get it in by the deadline.
Yeah.
But if you're like really can't get it in, you may very possibly be able to get an extension. I'm not 100% sure about that.
So if that's the case, if you absolutely cannot finish by 19th, send them the email.
It looks bad if you need an extension.
Yeah.
It looks bad if you need an extension.
Especially because it's been out for how many months? 2 or something?
Yeah, 2 or 3. You could explain that some SHADs gave a talk very close to the deadline, and then because of that, your application isn't done. But the reference letter, I'm pretty sure that can come in later. And the way that the reference also works is it's not necessarily like I think university references and like scholarship references, they just have the reference, the person who's writing the reference just basically just write a letter about you, or just provide a contact number. For SHAD, they basically give them a mini SHAD application. So there's like different boxes. So generally speaking, if you did what Henry said to like talk about my responsibility, then you could just make sure that they put a sort of responsibility spin on those like mini essays that they're writing. Yeah.
What's the roughly time we start to accept the applications?
February.
It's February, so I can.
I think they said it starts February 1st or something like that.
So yeah. February 2019, yeah. And everyone receives applications at the same time, and you receive your application in the form of a letter. So it's like a package in the mail.
Yeah,
that
there's no online.
Yeah, there's no online. So it's kind of like getting into university. It's similar.
It's a very big deal. If you get in, they have like this card, and they want you to post like, oh, I got in, and stuff like that.
You got a question? Yeah, go ahead.
So presently, right now, I'm in grade 9, and obviously I cannot. So basically, the clubs that I've joined right now, I've noticed don't include a lot of things that would touch on like usual STEAM subjects. So presently, it's debate and DECA are my 2 big ones.
Mhm.
So like, what clubs would you suggest for me to consider
Yeah.
joining?
So the funny thing is that although the SHAD is STEAM, very few SHADs actually have those STEAM qualities. I found myself to be kind of an exception. Like, I'm really into robotics. I do a lot of robotics. That was like very prevalent throughout my application. And robotics doesn't exist in most of Canada. So the programs that I participate in don't exist in the majority of Canada. Like they're just not available, which is unfortunate, but it's just the fact of the matter is that. Not to mention that a lot of kids aren't actually participating in these programs. So at my campus, there was only 2 other people who were actually in robotics, which I would consider to be like the highest form of technical skill that you could have, would be like robotics on an application. So the rest of them usually had those soft skills. So they were like part of their student government. They like ran the student government or something like that. Or they were like really great at piano, and they had won a bunch of piano awards. Or they were extremely good at debate, and they won a bunch of debate awards. Or they were extremely good at DECA, and they won a bunch of DECA awards.
I think they usually look for people who are really good at the thing that they do. So at our campus, we had someone who was going off to be an Olympic rower, someone who had won several Rubik's Cube solving competitions nationally, some really very good artists. So they have like people who are very different, not STEM, just good at what they do.
Yeah, good at what they do. That's a very good way to describe it. So like the best in Canada kind of thing of what they do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why each person kind of gives SHAD the different aspect, because there's 60 people, so like there's some time, like I didn't talk to some people very much, but every time, like every day I would try to talk to a new person, and every day you learn something new because they do something absolutely completely different than you. So
Yep. Yeah. Any other questions?
怎么样？我们这小伙子够实在吧？把自己的压箱底儿扔一扔给大家看。So when I flatter you, I feel like make sure that you understand what I'm talking about. So this is my favorite young man. to be very honest with you, we've been working together for almost a year, right?
Yep,
in the
it's about a year now.
program.
Yeah.
Very dedicated, very responsible, right? I mean, these two can go a long way. I can tell you today, they can go a long way in whatever the career they pursue, right? Role model to my own kid. So, going back to SHAD application, if you have further questions, stay behind and feel free to ask them, right?
Yep.
Otherwise, I think we're running out of time. Okay, good night.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.